Thanks for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Ephraim Graham. We're learning more about the man who shot a Canadian soldier Wednesday and then blasted his way into the Parliament building in Ottawa. It is the second terrorist attack in Canada in 3 days, and once again, devotion to Islam, the motivation. Gary Lane has more.
Canadian police are investigating to determine if 32-year-old Canadian Michael Zahaf Babo acted alone or with others. Wednesday morning, Babo shot and killed Corporal Nathan Cirillo as he stood guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier in Ottawa. Moments later, he stormed into the Parliament building with a blaze of gunfire before he was shot and killed by the sergeant-at-arms. Investigators now say they believe Babo was from Quebec and was a new convert to Islam. They say his passport was recently seized after he was designated a high-risk traveler. In a televised address to his nation, Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper said the attack was an act of terrorism. He gave a stern warning to other would-be terrorists.
But let there be no misunderstanding. We will not be intimidated. Canada will never be intimidated.
President Obama did not directly call the shooting an act of terrorism, but he assured the public the United States will continue to work with Canada to thwart acts of violence and terrorism.
Our national security teams are coordinating very closely, given not only is Canada one of our closest allies in the world, but there are our neighbors and our friends.
Wednesday's act of Islamic terror in Ottawa came just 2 days after another recent convert to Islam ran over 2 soldiers near Montreal. National security advisors and foreign policy experts on both sides of the border expect there will be more to come.
I would not be surprised at all if there are more in Canada and across the West in general.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
The threat posed by Islamic terrorism is very real in the United Kingdom as well. According to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, 5 Britons a week travel to Iraq or Syria to join ISIS. These British jihadis are one of the main reasons the country's terror threat level was raised to severe back in August. Caitlin Burke traveled to London, and she brings us more on what this increased threat level means and how locals are responding.
In the UK, a severe threat is the 4th highest of 5 levels. It means an attack is likely, but not imminent.
Here on the streets of London, business goes on as usual. As you can see, the terror threat level isn't keeping anyone away, and locals say that for the most part, everything feels normal.
We know it's a risk, we know it can be out there, but people are determined to live their lives, I think, and just not have it interfere with their lives.
Certainly it doesn't seem to be affecting life here in London that much right now.
It's been quite a while since we've actually had a terrorist attack, so most people are vigilant, but it doesn't really affect their day-to-day lives.
Authorities say security services are very good at stopping attacks from happening, and Britain shouldn't overestimate the terror threat. But they warn against complacency. The reach of ISIS is no longer limited to the Middle East, as an alarming number of Western jihadists are joining the terrorist group.
Well, there's about 500 to 600 Britons, mostly British Muslims, who've gone over to join ISIS and have declared allegiance for them.
Professor Alan Johnson is a former advisor to the Home Office on Islamic extremism and radicalization. He says that before ISIS radicalized them, British Muslims had been useless when it came to actually carrying out an attack. Authorities stopped attempt after attempt. But this may no longer be the case when they return to the streets of the UK after their time with ISIS.
The concern is that these jihadis have been in a very permissive environment in which they've been able to hone the tools of their trade, their skills, including bomb making, so they may come back and be a lot less useless and more able to carry out attacks. That's one of the concerns. And most obviously, they carry the kind of travel documents which will allow them to come back into the country, and they've declared allegiance to ISIS, which has the UK in its crosshairs.
It's not just the UK in the crosshairs of ISIS, but the rest of Europe and America as well. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Mass Palestinian threw rocks at a Jerusalem kindergarten this morning. That's just one day after a terrorist killed a 3-month-old baby driving his car into a crowded Jerusalem train station. CBN Middle East Bureau correspondent Julie Stahl has the story of rising tensions in Jerusalem.
Wednesday's terror attack was captured by a security camera that showed Abdelrahman al-Shaludi driving off the road and accelerating as he ran over pedestrians waiting for a train. 3-month-old Chaya Zissel Brown, an American citizen, was killed and 7 others wounded in the attack. Chaya's grandfather told reporters her parents had tried for years to have a child and had just returned from the Western Wall. She was buried overnight in Jerusalem. Shaludi, the terrorist, was from the mostly Arab neighborhood of Silwan, also known as the City of David, the original site of biblical Jerusalem.
The suspect fled the scene. He was shot by police units that responded quickly in the area. And obviously we're looking at this incident at this moment in time as a strong possibility of a terrorist-related incident.
Recently, a number of Jewish families moved into Silwan, sparking protests there. Media reports said Hamas carried out the attack.
The attack on a mother and baby is typical of Hamas, President Abbas's partner in the Palestinian government. President Abbas himself, unfortunately, continues to use inflammatory rhetoric, inciting against Israelis. This instead of being a force for peace and reconciliation.
For months, Palestinians have mounted a campaign of stone throwing at Israelis in eastern sections of Jerusalem, which they want for a capital of a future state. On his Facebook page, Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon said, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not about territory, but about Palestinian refusal to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Back here at home, a Maryland man is facing charges for jumping the White House fence just last night. His name is Dominic Adesanya, and Secret Service agents say he barely made it onto the north lawn before 2 police dogs got him. Police say Adesanya didn't have any weapons, and officers arrested him minutes after the incident. Adesanya's father tells CNN his son is paranoid and hears voices. Just last month, another fence jumper got all the way into the White House, creating a shakeup that led to the resignation of the head of the Secret Service. Most new healthcare signups under Obamacare came through the expansion of Medicare and not private insurance. A new Heritage Foundation study examines the numbers from the first half of 2014. It shows 71% of the increased coverage came through Medicaid expansion in 25 states and the District of Columbia. In other words, Obamacare so far is mainly a simple expansion of Medicaid. The numbers also show 61% of the gain in individual coverage was offset by a drop in employer group coverage. A curious story from Illinois is raising concerns of election fraud in the upcoming midterm elections. According to the group Watchdog.org, Republican candidate for state representative Jim Monahan cast his ballot early at a public library Monday. Problem is, the ballot showed he voted for his Democratic opponent. The story gets even more strange. As he studied the entire slate, Moynihan discovered every Republican vote had been transformed into a vote for a Democrat. Officials said the problem was caused by a calibration error and removed the machine from service. A federal judge has ruled there is no constitutional right to same-sex marriage. District Judge Juan Perez Jimenez upheld Puerto Rico's law defining marriage as the union of one man and one woman. Most federal rulings in recent months have gone in the opposite direction, striking down voter-approved marriage laws. But Perez Jimenez said those other courts were misinterpreting recent Supreme Court rulings through inexplicable contortions of the mind or perhaps even willful ignorance. He continued, for now, one basic principle remains. The people acting through their elected representatives may legitimately regulate marriage law. And up next, church and state working together for a change. Hear why these two sides are joining forces. Protests in Ferguson, Missouri continued last night as Michael Brown's official autopsy results were made public. The autopsy was obtained by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. It shows Brown was shot in the hand at close range, and experts say that supports claims of a struggle with Officer Darren Wilson. A microscopic exam also showed foreign matter found on Brown's thumb was consistent with products that are discharged from the barrel of a firearm. The findings were similar to those of an autopsy commissioned by Brown's family. Results of a third autopsy performed by the Justice Department have not been released. With nearly half of its students at or below the poverty level, the Fulton County public school system in Georgia needed help. So it turned to local churches, and they answered the challenge with everything from food to athletic programs. Charlene Aaron brings us this good news story of churches putting their faith into action.
Obviously new.
Okay. Francella Perryman believes in the church's calling to meet the needs of the community. She's especially passionate about kids and practices what she preaches as outreach director for Mount Pisgah United Methodist Church in the Atlanta suburb of Johns Creek.
Jesus did not just sit in the pews. He was out in the community. And so if we are to seriously be a light to the world, you have got to get out into the community and support these children.
So when the Fulton County Public Schools asked for help from the faith community, Perryman immediately reached out to Hillside Elementary School, where many low-income students attend.
I just went to the principal and talked to her and found out what her needs were and our need to be a light.
Dr. Robert Avosa is superintendent of Fulton County Public Schools.
Well, with the school system of nearly 100,000 students and almost half of which live at or below the poverty level, it was clear early on that no matter how many resources we had, we weren't going to be able to reach every one of our children.
More than 100 houses of worship, including churches, synagogues, and others, have offered services ranging from feeding programs to after-school athletic camps.
As I began to talk with community members, it became very clear that there were a lot of people in the community, in our faith community in particular, that were interested in helping.
He knew going from talking about the plan to making it happen would be an uphill battle.
We had some folks in the media here in Atlanta questioning whether or not I was bringing in churches to change the way people believed. But, we were careful about that. We brought in an attorney to share early on with our faith community the importance of working with schools, that this is a place for volunteerism, a place for people to help.
Perryman says the goal is demonstrating that help in tangible ways.
We're not so much focused on only having them attend our church. It's, again, being a partner with them and allowing them to see the light of Christ and supporting the schools.
Students here at Hillside Elementary are reaping tremendous benefits from the partnership between the Fulton County Public School District and the faith community.
Volunteers from Mount Pisgah provide tutoring and mentoring programs during lunchtime. And the church recently hosted a back-to-school event, providing backpacks and free school supplies. Hillside principal Dr. Maisha Adway believes partnering with churches and other groups simply makes sense.
I think the biggest walk away is that our schools are supported and don't always have to be supported by us. They're community, faith-based organizations that get a benefit from religious benefit from supporting us. So why do we need to not tap into that resource?
The church also provides shuttle service to the school for parents interested in attending parent conferences but have no transportation. As a result, attendance has increased dramatically.
These parents want to be involved, and if transportation was an obstacle, that's the least that we could do, is to allow them to utilize our vehicles.
Dr. Adway says the help makes her job easier.
I can't do everything, and I can't provide everything for my kiddos. It doesn't have to be grandiose. It just has to be sustainable, and that's what Mount Pisgah has provided for me, and it's just a simple thing.
We talk about our plans for the next year. We've been extremely successful and extremely blessed in our partnership with the school.
Blessings that extend to all involved.
The better prepared kids are to be self-sufficient and to contribute to the community, the healthier the community. And at the end of the day, I think, it's a great place to focus. It's a win-win for everybody.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News, Roswell, Georgia.
Coming up, help for people who are extremely overweight and who don't want to go under the knife to lose it. You'll meet a man who lost 162 pounds in just 8 months, right after this. The family who eats together fights childhood obesity together. That's the finding from a new study from researchers at the University of Minnesota, which says children are apparently less likely to gain extra weight and more likely to eat better if they were part of family meals that were enjoyable and relaxing. The families didn't always eat together every night, but kids who ate in another part of the house, like in front of a television, were more likely to be overweight. Other research has also shown a link between frequent family meals and a lower rate of overweight children. John Blair lost 162 pounds in just 8 months, and he didn't do it on a fad diet, nor did he go under the knife. As health reporter Lori Johnson shows us, he did it on a medically supervised weight loss plan.
John Blair used to be too heavy to comfortably walk around the block. But now that he's lost 162 pounds, it's easy.
Well, I feel great. I feel great about it. It does have results, and that's what's making me feel great.
He's talking about a medically supervised weight loss program. Just 8 months ago, he weighed in at a staggering 526 pounds, barely able to squeeze into these size 66 jeans.
Oh, wow, this fits two of us. Look at that. You've almost gone down half of your size.
Yeah. John's thrilled to once again climb steps 1 foot per stair and to have enough energy to rake the yard. He wants to lose about another 100 more pounds in order to reach his goal of 250, the same weight as when he was in the military. The medically supervised weight loss program produces fast results, and that motivates you to stick with it. You have 4 meal replacements a day, which means no outside foods at all.
They're powders. Now, some of them form into soups, some of them are puddings, and some of them are just shakes. And then they do also have bars that you can substitute one a day. It's satisfying. It really is.
The suit John wore for our interview appeared tight just 8 months ago. Now look how it hangs on him. And check out how much unhealthy belly fat he's lost. After failing with other diets, John hasn't cheated one bit with this one, not even during the holidays.
My food was coming. I knew it was coming. I didn't have to have, the ham and the yams, and I didn't have to have that.
The key to this supervised weight loss is that it's under the watchful eye of a doctor.
We check a patient's lab test. We check a patient's medication list to see if they're on medications that may be promoting weight gain. So I may suggest medication changes from that aspect. We also look at how their medication needs change during their weight loss, because someone on insulin is going to need a much lower dose of insulin. Their blood pressure medicines may decrease.
According to the Centers for Disease Control, reducing your weight by 5% is considered significant weight loss. The medically supervised program can lead to a 30% drop.
Compare that to bariatric surgery, they may be down 40 to 50% of their original weight. So we're getting changes similar to, not as much as, but similar to bariatric surgery, and people aren't having to go through the surgery.
Anyone who's ever dieted knows half the battle is losing the weight, the other half is keeping it off. One of the keys of this program, regular meetings with a dietitian, so folks learn how to make good choices once they're back on real food.
When people start realizing the role of protein, fats, and carb in the diet, they just get a sense of empowerment.
Barbara Meckes teaches clients to avoid sugars, especially high fructose corn syrup, and advises steering clear of starches like bread. When it comes to fats, stay away from hydrogenated oils, also called trans fats, and overly refined oils like vegetables. Meckes says some saturated fats like coconut oil are healthy, as are natural oils like olive.
I encourage people to go to, as much as possible, the expeller pressed or cold pressed fats, and those are more fats that are straight from the origin.
Even if you eat healthy food, you can still gain weight by eating too much of it. So that's where this portion plate comes in handy. It trains you to eat the right amount, and it's not just food.
We've talked several times about sleep, how you're producing ghrelin in your stomach. If you don't get enough sleep, the ghrelin takes over and that makes you hungry. So if things like that I never knew before.
This fitness tracker reminds its wearer to stay active.
A lot of them will send your smartphone a text message when you've been still for more than an hour and tell you time to get up and move. Some of them will actually give you a vibrating alarm when it's time to get up and move.
And finally, there's the emotional component. What was behind the weight gain?
Because a lot of people do have food addiction, or they turn to food during times of stress or anger or boredom. And so our goal is to try to teach people alternative ways to get that relaxation, the break from the stress, maybe some relief from some of the boredom in other ways besides turning toward food.
So whether you have 20 pounds to lose or over 200 like John, a medically supervised weight loss program may be just what you need for a longer, healthier life. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
And finally this hour, Christian tightrope walker Nick Walinda is getting ready for his next stunt. Take a look at video from Walinda's walk across Niagara Falls just 2 years ago. His latest adventure will take him to the Windy City. Next month, he plans to walk a tightrope between the west and east towers of Chicago's Marina City building. That is 635 feet off the ground. But here's the twist. He's going to do the entire stunt blindfolded. This will be the second highest walk of his career. Walinda says tightrope walking is what God has called him to. CBN met up with him in 2012, and he had this advice for anyone looking to find their calling.
It's all about faith. You know, God's grace is bigger than, His grace abounds. And it's really important that you learn more, study God, and become close to Him. And I believe that will naturally come to you.
CBN's Wendy Griffith is catching up with Walinda this week to hear about his latest high wire adventure. Make sure you tune in on air and online for her story. That's going to do it for CBN News today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. Want to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today? Do it on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. It is Thursday. Make it a thankful one.